The police dog barked non-stop at the technician. When he ran, his bag revealed a dark secret. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It's always awesome to see how far our stories are reaching. Sarah Bennett, a woman with pale skin, steel grey eyes, and a posture that spoke of years in law enforcement, stared suspiciously at the man who claimed he was there to fix her internet connection. "Which company did you say you're from?" Sarah asked, her voice calm but sharp like a blade. "ConnectSphere, ma'am," the man replied, avoiding eye contact as his trembling fingers fumbled with a supposed signal meter. Shadow, a German shepherd with dark fur and fierce eyes, let out a low, guttural growl. His ears were up, his body tense. Sarah, still recovering from leg surgery, watched the scene from her chair. She didn't need to be on duty to read the signs. This guy was faking it, and badly. The man took a step toward the home server room. Shadow blocked his path, baring his teeth. The stranger swallowed hard, clearly shaken. "You can call me if you need me to come back later," he stammered. "No need for that," Sarah shot back with an icy smile. Then, without warning, the technician spun on his heels and bolted for the door, dropping a black backpack. Shadow chased him to the garden gate, barking like a beast from hell. The man leaped over the fence with almost unnatural agility, vanishing into the rain-soaked trees. Sarah locked the door and eyed the backpack. She picked it up carefully, placed it on the dining room table, and unzipped it. What she found inside made her blood run cold. Directional microphones, night vision lenses, a satellite receiver, and wires, lots of wires. At the bottom, in a hidden compartment, a small, crude bomb with a timer. Sarah didn't scream. She wasn't that kind of woman. With the cold resolve forged in the darkest years of her career, she called her former partner, Inspector Claire Morgan, now head of technical intelligence at the FBI. "I found something," Sarah said. "Someone wanted me gone." Without a trace. Claire arrived 40 minutes later, soaked, her blonde hair plastered to her face, tension clear in her blue eyes. She examined the gear with expertise, but it was Sarah who spotted the most chilling detail. A barely visible label with a serial number used only for military-grade components. "This isn't a random hit," Claire said, her fingers flying over her laptop. "It's a professional job. And someone's funding it from the inside," Sarah added, stroking Shadow's head. The dog lay beside her, still on edge. They didn't sleep that night. The storm raged on and paranoia settled into the house like an uninvited guest. Sarah, though off duty, reached out to old contacts. Claire, with restricted access to federal databases, cross-checked data. Within 24 hours, the fake technician's face appeared on the screen. James Carter, an American with a rap sheet for arms trafficking and proven ties to Victor Hayes, an international drug lord Sarah had helped take down 3 years earlier. The game was on again, but this time it was personal. The clock struck 3 in the morning when Claire finished decoding the last set of data from a chip hidden inside the satellite receiver. The blue glow of the screen lit up her sharp face as Sarah stood by the window, a cold coffee mug in her hands, her eyes fixed on the dark garden. "This kind of encryption isn't standard," Claire muttered, not looking away from the monitor. "They used it in covert ops in Berlin during the Cold War." "You're saying we're up against someone with military intelligence training?" Sarah asked without turning. "Or someone with access to it? Look at this." Claire turned the screen toward her. The latest files show coordinates, money transfers, lists of initials, and something else. The movements of someone called K7 tracked around your house for the past 5 days. K7, an alias, a protocol. "It's a person," Claire said grimly. "Someone watching you from the inside. There are cross-references with records from the state police department." Sarah's stomach tightened. It wasn't paranoia. Someone from her own past was selling her out. While Claire set up a new tracking line, Sarah mentally reviewed her old colleagues' faces. Who would have turned? Who'd profit from her silence? Then, like a bolt of lightning, she remembered something. Captain Robert Mitchell, her direct superior during the operation that took down Victor Hayes, had vanished from the public eye and cut all contact since his early retirement. Claire noticed her shift in expression. "What's on your mind?" "Mitchell. He always knew more than he let on. The night we nabbed Hayes, he pulled us out of the operation before we found the vault. Said it was for our safety, but now I think it was, so we wouldn't see what was inside." Sarah grabbed her jacket and headed for the door without asking permission. Shadow sprang up, following her silently. The night was still damp, the streets empty, but the urgency in her stride spoke louder than any warning. They reached the cabin where Mitchell had lived for the past 2 years, tucked away in a northern county surrounded by woods. Sarah parked 100 yards out and approached on foot. Every snapping twig under her boots stirred memories of her tactical unit days. "Stay close but quiet," she whispered to Shadow, who padded to her left, alert to every shadow. The cabin was silent, but a faint orange light leaked through a window crack. Sarah circled to the back. Something was off. 2 mugs sat on the porch table. Mitchell lived alone. Then a crunch. Behind her. She spun, Glock in hand. A shot rang out. The bullet grazed her left shoulder. She dove behind a woodpile. Shadow lunged at the attacker, a man in a balaclava with a silenced pistol, caught off guard by the dog's ferocity. Sarah rose in time to fire once. The attacker's body hit the wet ground, dead. Shadow whimpered softly, his fur stained with the man's blood. But it wasn't his. Inside the cabin, Mitchell was tied to a chair, his mouth bloody, one eye swollen shut from beatings. He barely recognized her before whispering, "It's Natalie. She's in charge." "Who's K7?" Sarah demanded. Mitchell coughed up blood. "You know him, and you won't believe it." But before he could say more, he convulsed. He died in seconds. Sarah stepped back, shaken. She looked at Shadow, then at Claire, who came running after tracking Sarah's phone GPS, which she'd forgotten to turn off. The pieces were falling into place, but the puzzle was bigger than they'd imagined. Dawn crept lazily over the dew-covered trees as Sarah, hands still stained with dirt and dried blood, entered the makeshift operations hub Claire had set up in her downtown Portland apartment. The place was cold, minimalist, with walls covered in maps, cables, and screens showing real-time graphs. It had no soul, but it was safe. Shadow lay by the door, resting silently, his body alert even at ease. Sarah stroked his head for a moment, as if it were the only respite in the chaos. Claire waited by a monitor. Her sharp face, with its controlled expression, barely hid her exhaustion. "I did what you asked," she said, without preamble. "I cross-checked old financial records with recent satellite account movements. It all points to one person, Natalie Brooks." Sarah frowned. That name was no longer just a shadow from the past. It was a living threat. Natalie had been Victor Hayes' romantic and operational partner for years. Her presence was always strategic, almost invisible. But now, she was calling the shots. "Where's she been the last 3 years?" Sarah asked. Claire took a deep breath. She went off the grid after Hayes went down, changed her identity, studied finance in Geneva, partnered with a tech company in London, and started a subsidiary in Delaware. Next Tech Solutions. That's where she's funding the new criminal network. Sarah swallowed hard. She remembered Natalie as an enigmatic figure, icy beauty, calculating mind, always spoke little, observed much. But there was more, an unspoken tension between them, an old suspicion now burning brighter. Natalie knew her too well. "And there's more," Claire added, zooming in on the screen. "Intercepted communications from Nextech's network say K7 will be activated soon. It's not an alias, it's an operative. Name." Claire hesitated, then said it. "Michael Evans." Sarah froze. The name hit her like a tombstone. Michael had been her partner for 5 years, her confidant, her friend, the man who saved her under crossfire in Budapest, the man who vanished after a supposed covert op in North Africa. "You sure?" "We confirmed it with AI facial analysis. He's changed, but it's him." Sarah took a step back. The puzzle pieces spun wildly in her head. If Michael was alive, had he faked his death? Had he switched sides? Claire watched her closely. She knew something else was shaking her. "What was between you two?" Sarah's voice cracked slightly. "He was something we never spoke about, something left unfinished. And now, he's part of this." The silence hung heavy in the room, but there was no time to dwell. Claire mapped out the next move. Track a confidential delivery Nextech was set to receive that night at a private hangar in Augusta's airport. It pointed to a key exchange, a new encryption software that would let Natalie vanish millions of dollars in seconds. Sarah changed quickly. Tactical pants, black boots, a vest with hidden compartments. She holstered her Glock and checked her backup knife. Shadow, seeing her like this, stood with a slight wag of his tail. He knew the ritual. They were going to war. "We're not doing this alone," Claire said. "Emily Foster agreed to back us with an off-the-book squad, but if this goes south, The government will deny everything. Sarah nodded. She was used to grey zones. Hours later, at the hangar's perimeter, the tension was thick. The building was dimly lit. 2 black vans waited on the tarmac. A private jet descended slowly through the artificial fog. Sarah, crouched behind a cargo container, adjusted her night vision goggles. She clearly saw a woman's silhouette stepping off the plane, hair tied back, long coat. Natalie. And beside her, walking as if he'd never been dead, Michael. The hangar seemed to hold the world's breath. The private jet's engines faded as Michael Evans stepped down the metal stairs, escorting Natalie Brooks like a bodyguard, or something worse. Sarah watched from the shadows. Her usually steady eyes flickered with a brutal mix of shock, anger, and a wound that didn't show but throbbed. Michael, with a thicker beard, hardened gaze, and a darker demeanor, wasn't the man she'd known, but he wasn't a stranger either, and that hurt the most. "Want us to shoot now?" Claire whispered through the earpiece. "No," Sarah replied, eyes locked on the target. "Not yet." Natalie moved across the tarmac with cat-like grace, followed by 2 techs carrying a steel briefcase. Inside, they knew, was the core of the new encryption software, tech that could erase money trails in under 3 seconds. What was being handed off tonight wasn't just power, it was digital immunity. Michael oversaw everything with precision. He jotted notes on a tablet, exchanged clipped words with the van drivers. He'd changed his uniform, his face, his purpose, but when he turned his head slightly, his eyes, ice blue, unforgettable to Sarah, scanned the perimeter as if he knew he was being watched. And for 1 second, just one, they locked on where she hid. Sarah tensed. She felt shadows shift beside her, ready to strike. No orders, just silent loyalty. But Michael looked away, indifferent. The operation moved forward. Claire from the surveillance van gave the signal. Emily Foster and her squad were in position. It was time. Sarah nodded, readied her weapon, and stepped out from cover with a hunter's precision. "FBI, everyone on the ground!" The scene erupted. 2 guards dropped instantly from sniper fire. 3 others fled toward the hangar's rear. Michael stepped in front of Natalie, drawing his gun but not firing. Natalie, though, raised the briefcase like a trophy. "You won't stop me, Sarah," she shouted, her voice cutting like ice. "Drop the case and surrender. This isn't a negotiation." Natalie laughed, almost mournful. "After everything we shared? After what you know?" That's when Sarah got it. Natalie wasn't just an enemy. There was more. A buried secret. Something unspoken now bleeding like an open wound. But before she could respond, Michael turned and shoved Natalie toward the hangar. "Run!" he yelled. "I'll hold them off." Sarah froze. Her heart pounded like it wanted to break free. She couldn't shoot him. Not yet. Claire, frantic through the earpiece. "Sarah, you have to do it. She's getting away." But Sarah lowered her gun. That moment was enough. Natalie and Michael vanished among the containers. The squad stormed the flanks, securing the area, seizing the plane, the briefcase, the vans. But the 2 biggest fish had slipped away. After the chaos, Sarah sat on a cargo crate. Shadows settled beside her, panting lightly, tongue out. Sirens wailed in the distance, but inside her was a deeper silence. "What did you see in his eyes?" Emily asked, approaching cautiously. "A broken promise," Sarah murmured, and a question with no answer. The night brought no rest. After the failed raid at the Augusta hangar, Sarah stayed in Claire's apartment, sitting before a wall plastered with photos, diagrams, and red thread connections. It looked like an obsession, because it was. An obsession to understand how everything had spiraled so violently, how her past had become a weapon against her. Claire, in a robe, hair loose, holding a coffee mug, broke the silence. "You didn't sleep a wink." "Couldn't," Sarah said hoarsely. "Not while he's out there, not while Natalie's breathing. You know he had a chance to shoot you and didn't." Sarah didn't answer right away. She stared at a photo, 7 years old, creased by time. Her, Michael, and the special ops team in Syria, all smiling after a mission. The last time she'd seen real light in Michael's eyes. "Sometimes not pulling the trigger is the cruelest torture," she muttered. Claire sighed, a mix of empathy and frustration. She knew Sarah was on the edge of an emotional break, though she'd never admit it. Then she brought up what they'd both been avoiding. "He knew about you and Natalie, didn't he?" Sarah glanced at her. A heavy silence hung until she finally spoke. "It was in Budapest. The night before the op that took down Hayes. We were all assigned to the same unit. Michael and I, we already had a complicated history, but Natalie and I, it was different. One night, intense, intimate, forbidden. Claire stayed quiet, listening, respecting. I don't know if Michael knew, but I think Natalie never forgot. When she joined Hayes, it felt like it wasn't just for power, but for revenge. Claire sat across from her, expression grave. And now she runs a network spanning Europe and America, with access to weapons, data, tech, and him. Michael's not just a traitor, he's a symbol. Catch him, and the network weakens. Kill him, and she loses her shield. Sarah nodded slowly. She got the logic, but her heart, hardened by years of service and betrayals, beat differently. I'll do what I have to, even if it breaks me. Just then, the apartment's security system beeped. Shadow, resting near the balcony, sprang up, growling low. Claire checked the monitors. A hooded figure stood alone outside the building, motionless, just watching, like a statue. Sarah stood, loaded her pistol, and approached the window. Through a long-range lens, she focused on the figure's face as it looked up. Michael. No visible weapons, just a bitter, resigned expression. And a small envelope in his hand, which he dropped in the mailbox before vanishing around the street corner. Sarah raced downstairs. Claire warned it was a trap, but Sarah didn't listen. The envelope was black, her name handwritten. Inside, a single old Polaroid. 3 figures. Her, Michael, Natalie, arms around each other, smiling. The date scrawled in marker, February 4th, Budapest. And on the back, a note. You were the center, and you never knew. Dawn filtered weakly through the apartment blinds, casting uneven lines of light across Sarah's face as she held the photo. The old paper trembled slightly, not from cold, but from contained rage, from grief she couldn't digest. That image, frozen in time, wasn't just a memory, it was a weapon, a key to a past now burning like an open wound. Claire, standing by the coffee maker, watched her silently. She knew she couldn't comfort her. No one could. I knew he had something to say, Claire murmured finally, but I didn't expect this. Sarah set the photo on the table, stood, and walked to the window. The world outside moved on, oblivious. Cars, fog, people rushing through their own dramas. It wasn't a message, Sarah said bitterly. It was a verdict, like he's saying, this all started because of you. Claire stepped closer, cautious. What if it's true? Sarah looked at her, unsurprised. I always knew. What we 3 felt was an equation with no solution, and someone was going to pay the price. Just then, Claire's phone buzzed, an encrypted alert. Emily Foster's voice crackled through the private channel. We intercepted an outgoing signal from an industrial zone outside Springfield. It's a Nextech substation. There's movement, but we can't go in without a warrant. Claire looked at Sarah. No words needed. Gear up. No room for mistakes this time. Hours later, on Springfield's outskirts, fog draped the asphalt like a shroud. The area was a derelict stretch of textile factories, now illegal warehouses. Sarah, Claire, Emily, and the intervention squad moved through rusted structures. The air smelled of dust, oil, and something older, almost ghostly. Shadow led the way, sniffing every corner. Suddenly he stopped. His ears shot up. A low growl rumbled in his throat. Here, Sarah whispered. Claire forced open a metal hatch. Behind it, a hallway lit by emergency lights led to a tech hub. Screens, servers, open briefcases, and at the far end, Natalie Brooks. She wore a sleek black outfit, her light brown hair pulled back with her usual meticulous precision. In her hands, a small detonator. Took you longer than I thought, she said, emotionless. Sarah aimed her gun. Drop it, Natalie smiled. A cold, almost maternal gesture. What if I told you this isn't a detonator? It's a transmitter with the exact coordinates of every account you couldn't trace. Would you shoot anyway? Sarah didn't answer. Her gaze was steady, but her breathing quickened. Where's Michael? She asked finally. Natalie's eyes flicked down for a second. Don't know, he left last night. Couldn't stand you being the target. Despite everything, he still loves you, whether he admits it or not. And you? Natalie let out a soft, almost nostalgic laugh. I never loved him, only you. The tension became unbearable. Claire, from a side angle, had Natalie in her sights. Emily and the other agents awaited orders. Shadow stayed to Sarah's right, alert, ready. "Surrender, Natalie, you're out of moves. Everyone's got a way out, Sarah. It's just about the price you're willing to pay." And then she did it. She threw the transmitter to the ground, smashing it. An impulse, a final act. "All the data, gone," Claire shouted. Emily ran, but Sarah didn't move. She just watched the woman she'd loved, or thought she'd loved, destroy the one thing that could have redeemed her. Natalie raised her hands slowly, not in surrender, but in farewell. "I left a long time ago." Natalie was escorted under tight security. No standard cuffs or vehicle. She was moved in a mobile containment cell with direct FBI satellite surveillance. Still, Sarah didn't breathe easy. She knew the end wasn't here, because the real loose thread, the most dangerous one, was still out there, and it had Michael's face. For the last 48 hours, Claire and the tech team had scoured traffic cameras, checkpoints, suspicious bank activity. Nothing. Michael Evans had vanished, with the same skill he'd once used to infiltrate enemy bases on covert ops. Sarah, exhausted, stared at the screens without blinking. She was in Mitchell's old cabin, now a full surveillance and analysis hub. The wood creaked with the wind. Outside, snow began to blanket the path. Shadow slept by the fireplace, but even at rest his ears twitched at the slightest sound. "There's got to be a clue," Sarah muttered to herself. "No one vanishes from the world without leaving a crack." Then the call came. A distorted male voice spoke from an encrypted number. "If you want answers, go alone to where it all began. Budapest, Obuda Cemetery, midnight." The call cut off. Sarah didn't need more. She knew it was him. No one else would use that phrase. No one else would understand its weight. The next day, without telling Claire or Emily, she took a commercial flight under a false identity. She brought Shadow, justified as a medical need. No one would stop her. It was a trip only old scars could make. Winter in Budapest was brutal. The city was cloaked in icy fog, bridges frosted, statues dusted with snow that gave them a ghostly look. Sarah walked the streets like a ghost revisiting its death. Every corner held a memory, every shadow a name. She reached the cemetery just before midnight. Ancient tombstones stood like stone sentinels. The wind whistled through bare trees, and there he was, Michael, standing by the grave of a forgotten general. In a long coat, his face etched with guilt. No visible weapons. He didn't seem to expect mercy or surrender. Sarah didn't speak right away. She studied him. "Never thought you'd be the one to call me here," she said at last. "Never thought we'd end up like this," he replied, voice rough. "But here we are." Silence. Just the crunch of snow under their boots. "Why?" Sarah asked, barely holding back her anger. "Why lie? Why betray everything?" Michael looked down. "Because I sold out. They promised me a life without shadows. And when I wanted to come back and it was too late, Natalie gave me a new purpose, but you were my truth." Sarah clenched her jaw. The freezing air cut sharper than any knife. "Did you ever love me?" Michael looked at her. For the first time in years, his eyes held something besides coldness. "Every second, but love doesn't wash away blood." Shadow, behind Sarah, growled softly. He'd smelled fear, or truth. "What do you want now?" she asked. Michael slowly pulled a device from his coat, a titanium flash drive. "Everything we destroyed, everything we hid, it's here. The names, the accounts, the roots, but only you can use it. It's keyed to your biometric signature. No one else." Sarah took it. For a moment, their fingers brushed, and in that touch, everything unspoken became unbearable. "This doesn't change anything, Michael. I know, but maybe it changes the ending." Then he walked away, not running, moving into the fog with the calm of a man who no longer feared death. Sarah didn't follow, didn't shoot. She stood there, the cold biting her skin, the flash drive burning in her palm. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't justice. It was all that remained. Truth. Back in Portland, the city felt different. Not its streets or buildings, but because Sarah wasn't the same woman who'd left. The wounds she'd once buried behind her analytical instincts now burned raw. No more shields, no protocols. Just a truth compressed into a titanium flash drive, and a world unready to face it. Mitchell's cabin, now a full-fledged surveillance and analysis hub, was the only place Sarah felt safe. Tell me in the comments, On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this story so far? Your opinion means a lot to me. Claire had been waiting for hours, worried, frustrated, and deeply relieved to see her walk in with Shadow at her side. "Where the hell were you?" she demanded, voice shaking. Sarah didn't answer right away. She walked to the desk, placed the flash drive on the biometric scanner, and with the calm of someone holding lit dynamite, started the read. "Budapest," she said finally. With him, Claire didn't need more. Her focus snapped to the screen, where lines of code spilled out at breakneck speed. The data was layered in encryption. Names, coordinates, illegal deposits, crypto transfers, maritime route plans. A digital monster fed for years by a network of invisible power brokers. "This is..." Claire could barely speak. "Sarah, this isn't just about Natalie. There are senators, judges, pharma security chiefs, diplomats. That's why they hid it. That's why Michael vanished. If this got out, nothing would be left standing," Sarah said firmly, her eyes lost in the abyss of consequences. Claire looked at her, a mix of awe and fear. "What are you going to do?" Sarah stood slowly. She stroked Shadow's back, the dog still alert, as if sensing something massive was coming. "I'm sending it all." Claire paled. "Sarah, that won't just expose them. You'll have half the government, international agencies and corporations gunning to erase you." "I know. And you won't be able to go back to the Force." "Don't want to." Sarah plugged in a second encrypted drive, shielded by multiple firewalls, and began a direct transmission to independent media, 2 European human rights agencies, and a group of exiled investigative journalists in Oslo. Claire watched without interfering. She'd crossed the threshold with her, even if she didn't say it. Minutes later, the system confirmed. Transmission complete. The silence in the cabin was deafening. "You just declared war," Claire whispered. "No, I just ended one." But it wasn't that simple. Within 2 hours, things started moving. First, a federal patrol on the highway. Then a drone circling overhead. Emily Foster called from a secure line. Her department had been raided, her team dismantled. They were hunting Sarah, not officially, but with clear intent. "I warned you," Claire said, stuffing gear into tactical bags. "I know, but if we vanish now, it's all for nothing." "So what's the plan?" "Expose the last face left," Sarah said, staring at a photo on the monitor. The pale, polished, corrupt face of Thomas Reed, Director of National Security, the man who'd sworn to protect her years ago and appeared 7 times in the flash drive's records. Shadow barked, once, like he approved. Sarah grabbed her gun, her coat, and the last shred of her old identity. "We're going to Washington." 3 months after the last pillar of the criminal network fell, the world was different. Not visibly, not in everyday gestures or controlled news broadcasts, but in the dark corridors of power, in rooms where impunity was stitched together, terror was palpable, because someone had dared to speak. And worse, someone had listened. The file Sarah Bennett released, dubbed the Blaze Ledger by the international press, sparked a chain reaction. Top officials in Europe and North America resigned abruptly. Some vanished. Others, like Thomas Reed, tried to fight. But the evidence was too clear, too vast, too painful to deny. He was ousted, prosecuted, and, ironically, judged under the same laws he'd once helped twist. Natalie Brooks was sentenced to life without parole. Her partial testimony, offered for protection, wasn't enough to save her. In a maximum security prison in Nevada, her name became a myth among inmates. The woman who nearly bought the world. Michael Evans was never caught. Some claim they saw him in Sweden under a new identity. Others swear he's dead, buried under a false name in a Polish forest. Sarah, though, holds her own silent truth, one that needs no confirmation. Claire Morgan retired from active duty. She now lives in a small coastal town in New Hampshire, quietly coordinating protection projects for whistleblowers and threatened journalists. She rarely speaks of the past, but in her living room hangs a frame with 3 names and a handwritten date. Budapest, February. Emily Foster was reinstated with honors at the FBI, leading an international task force against digital financial crimes. When asked about the Portland operation, she always says the same thing. Justice begins where fear ends. And Sarah vanished from the radar after releasing the Blaze Ledger. Some say she's in Alaska, training police dogs at a private facility. Others claim she travels covertly with Shadow, aiding independent investigations. What's certain is she never used her real name again. But every so often, in regions marked by corruption and abuse, mysterious reports surface of a dark-haired woman with cold eyes and a German shepherd with a lethal nose. Cameras catch fleeting glimpses, and soon after, someone falls, an operation crumbles, a secret explodes. In a basement in Amsterdam, a journalist writes an article under a pseudonym. At the end, a single line, simple, direct, almost silent. The only bullet that never misses is the truth. Thank you so much for sticking with this story until the end. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a ton and motivates us to keep bringing new stories every week. And since you're here, take a moment to check out another one of our stories that's popping up on your screen. Big hug and see you next time. Stay well.